Hello, this movie tells the story of Matthew Kidman is a directly achiever who feels that he has never virtually lived life to the fullest. That is, until he meets the girl next door. Danielle moved in next door, and Matthew concept he had observed the lady of his goals. The whole lot was going well, till Matthew's friend Eli found out that Danielle was clearly a former film star. Matthew doesn't recognize how to take the information or the way to deal with Danielle, and matters moved from terrible to worse when Danielle's former producer Kelly apparently takes her lower back. The film opens with an formidable man. Matthew Kidman has been normal into Georgetown University, but can't afford the training. As Magnificent's president, he has raised $25,000 to deliver a fantastic Cambodian pupil, Sam Nam, to study in the America, but otherwise finds few other recollections of his excessive college experience. His friends, the erroneous film student Eli, and the shy and awkward Clitz, overrule his displeasure with their lack of volatile conduct. In his automobile, Matthew began imagining if following his amusing to the seashore with different pals who favored exhilaration, not to mention being centered by way of safety, so he refused to join. One night, Matthew rehearses his speech at the same time as walking through the trash, and is amazed to peer a girl, Danielle, a new neighbor who has moved in next door. Matthew became surprised looking Danielle who walked in. While calling Eli to tell him of the whereabouts of his new neighbor, Matthew is surprised to peer Danielle from his bedroom window changing garments. But all at once Danielle turned and saw Matthew. He came to Matthew's house and was acquired by Matthew's dad and mom. Matthew notioned that Danielle's arrival to file him for his movements has watched Danielle from above. However, then Danielle delivered herself to her mother and father. They advised to Matthew that he have to display Danielle around city. During the car trip, Danielle stopped the car and asked Matthew, "Did you want what you just saw?" Matthew stated, "I did see you earlier, but best briefly. And I don't think it's a massive deal." Finally Danielle forced him to take off his clothes and forced him to run down the street. Tomorrow Matthew starts telling Eli and Clitz about Danielle, but he regrets that nighttime he didn't have the braveness to hug Danielle. Matthew and Danielle start our visible bonding together through a series of challenges. At nighttime, they entered a house that had a swimming pool. However, Matthew was surprised that the owner of the house turned into the principal. And the two of them almost get stuck within the pool but break out and visit Eli and Clitz. At a raucous party thrown by his classmates, Matthew brings Danielle with Eli and Clitz. But whilst he met another friend, Hunter. The owner of the party deliberately kicked Matthew out subtly with the excuse that there had been already too many humans. However, Matthew ultimately found the braveness to hug Danielle. Day after today, Matthew's reverie is shattered when Eli tells him that Danielle is a former actress which he showed through videotape and watched Matthew. At Eli's inspiration, Matthew takes Danielle to an inn and treats her coldly. Danielle, feeling humiliated, suddenly ends their relationship. Matthew attempts to express regret, reasoning that Eli advised him to do it like in person. However, Danielle is still angry because she likes Matthew the way Matthew looks at her. Danielle finally decides to go back to her old task. Matthew attempts to express regret, but when he comes to Danielle stunned by a person, Kelly is there with Danielle. Matthew, Eli, and Clitz visit a movie conference in Las Vegas where Kelly, a film producer and Danielle's ex-girlfriend, menacingly warns Matthew not to intrude with his enterprise. Meanwhile, Eli and Clitz lied to a number of the people there that they were movie directors. But their lies had been exposed, making a huge guy chase them there. In the meantime, Matthew ignores Kelly, convincing Danielle to leave her past behind and go back the piece of paper Danielle once drew to her. The next day Danielle came to look Matthew and supplied to pressure him in her car. Matthew also offers Danielle to go to the dance with him. Luckily responded by Danielle. Some days later, an angry Kelly kidnaps Matthew and thinks that Matthew has betrayed her. Hearing Danielle got here to Matthew cost Kelly $30,000 in charges. After hitting Matthew, Kelly realizes that Danielle simply loves Matthew, so she gives Matthew to visit the house of a Kelly Enterprise accomplice, Hugo Posh. And that would erase Matthew's debt by means of taking Hugo's award. As soon as Matthew entered the residence, Kelly known as the police and left. Matthew almost receives caught by the cops, but he hides and calls Eli and Klitz and Danielle and rushes off to the Scholarship Awards dinner, analyzing the best speech. Stimulated through the goodies Kelly tricked into drinking, Matthew walks in on the banquet and is accompanied by Danielle, but he is nonetheless below the sweets and behaving strangely. While Matthew commenced analyzing his speech, he improvised a sentimental speech. He said, "Now I assume the moral issue is about locating something you truly love. Something very special, meaning greater than something in this world. And whilst you locate him, you sacrifice for him. You take all of the risks. You put her above everything, the entirety. That juice is the result of the best squeeze. Those are all the so-called moral factors." Everybody clapped, inclusive of Danielle. Even though he endeared himself to Danielle, he did now not win the scholarship. Kelly exacts similarly revenge by impersonating Matthew's student advisor and taking the money raised for Samnan. Matthew is afraid that he can be involved in the rip-off. He turns to Danielle for help, and she calls Hugo Posh. They agree to film the prom night with Danielle's former associate and Matthew's classmate as actors. Eli directed the manufacturing, and when nobody became capable to tug off the key scenes, Klitz found the confidence to do it. Because they are afraid that Hugo will not pay them. They celebrate the success of the shoot. Matthew and Danielle for the first time romance. The next morning, Eli calls Matthew, telling him the tapes have been stolen. Matthew enters his residence to discover Kelly, who has the tape. "Speak me to his parents and foremost." Kelly demands Matthew half of the eventual earnings. Whilst Matthew refuses, Kelly plays the tape for the group, who are surprised to find that Matthew and his pals have made a modern academic movie. Hugo Posh and Matthew made millions, and Posh paid for Samnang's trip. Eli becomes a hit filmmaker. Klitz is going to college and is happy to research that his classmates are enjoying his scenes in films, and Matthew attends college in Georgetown, taking Danielle with him. Consequently, the storyline video. I wish you like it. Thank you for looking, and usually be careful.